Good day, esteemed viewers. I extend a cordial invitation to all who frequent this channel to partake of the following narrative. I request that you express your approval and indicate your intention to remain apprised of future content by clicking the like and subscribe buttons, respectively. I assure you that these actions are relatively simple and, moreover, will be greatly appreciated by me. The scene opens with Mandy gazing intently at the well-dressed man who stands before her. His words reverberate within her mind. "Amanda Black, you've been served," he states, his voice betraying a hint of sadness. A profound silence descends upon the office, and for a fleeting moment, Mandy experiences a sense of time standing still. In her hand, she holds the death sentence of a 5-year-old. After a year of marriage, Mandy sank into a chair and clutched the papers. Gradually, the office resumed its activities. The stares, whispers, and disapproving stares suddenly intensified. Mandy heard her friend's soft voice next to her. "Come on, Kit," it said. The friend took Mandy's hand and helped her stand. "Let's take you to the conference room," she said. "Away from this spotlight." Mandy was a 30-year-old woman with black hair. The elderly woman escorted her friend from the vicinity of her colleagues, who had been observing her. Those who had witnessed the altercation noted the transformation in Mandy's demeanor from a boisterous, flirtatious, and cheerful blonde to a subdued and distressed woman in a matter of minutes. Some interpreted this shift as a manifestation of irony or humor, while others perceived it as a display of pity. The majority of observers had already formulated a hypothesis regarding the cause of the divorce. "I must admit, I am perplexed by Mandy's behavior," I said. "However, I have noticed a gradual improvement in her circumstances." I embraced her in a gesture of solidarity. She embraced herself as if this action would imbue her with additional strength. Kit embraced her friend in an attempt to calm her. "I am unsure," Kit said softly, "if there were any indications that this would occur in the opposite manner." She gasped as if we were newlyweds again. I decided that he was attempting to make up for lost time spent abroad. The child only flinched slightly, but Mandy noticed it. Mandy mentally replayed the last 4 months of her marriage in her mind. Upon returning from Afghanistan, Eric's relationship with his wife underwent a significant transformation. Their sexual intimacy reached a level of intensity that surpassed their experiences during his previous deployment in Iraq 2.5 years prior. He exhibited a profound level of passion and sensuality, which often left her overwhelmed. Reflecting on their recent experiences, she noted that his return from the most recent trip last week had also had a profound impact on her. His actions and demeanor had brought a renewed sense of warmth and excitement to their relationship. "God, Keith, Eric just wore me out. We did this so often that in the end, I begged him to stop." Mandy's smile disappeared as she looked at her friend's questioning face. "Nothing happened when I was on that trip. I told you it was over," she said. Kit nodded but didn't smile. "When was the last time Eric just hugged you or just kissed and touched you? When was the last time he made gentle love to you?" She sat in a da. Gazing at Kit with a look of inquiry and a determined sigh, Kit gazed back at her friend before continuing, "Mandy, did he make love to you?" Mandy covered her face with her hands and began to sob deeply. "Why did he do that?" she thought to herself. She then suddenly froze, realizing that he could not have known. She slowly raised her head, and her eyes widened in horror and disbelief. "Oh my God," she whispered. "He knows." Despite the circumstances, Kit's eyes remained dry as she embraced her distraught friend. She was acquainted with Eric, and if he truly possessed this knowledge, it was a dire situation. Eric acknowledged her presence with a nod, his attention diverted to his cell phone. He expressed gratitude before the call concluded. Upon receiving confirmation that the packages containing photographs and legal documents had reached his wife, Eric proceeded to launch a process that would alter the course of his life forever. He initiated a series of actions on his laptop, initiating a sequence of events that would leave an indelible mark on his personal history. The life of his unfaithful wife. She would remember it for the rest of her life. He thought, picking up the phone and dialing a number. "Hello, this is the personnel department." A pleasant young voice rang out. Neither party resorted to raised voices, yet the atmosphere remained palpably hostile. At the conclusion of the call, Eric took a moment to compose himself, glancing at the phone to see that his wife had already called him 5 times. He attempted to calm his nerves, reminding himself that she had not yet reached out. A sudden knock on the door of the conference room drew his attention. When Kid opened it, she immediately recognized the 3 individuals standing outside. The first individual to enter the room was an elderly man named Simon Samuels, who was the vice president and head of the branch. He was followed by John Davis, who was the head of human resources. Kit observed that Mr. Davis's face was bright red, and she believed she saw the heat emanating from his face. Anna Prescott, who was the office manager and boss of Mandy and Kit, and Miss Garnett were standing behind them. Mr. Samuel said, "We need to talk to Miss Black," in a grim tone of voice. He then instructed them to please go back to your desk. The 3 individuals entered the room, and Kit left the room carefully. Once the door was closed behind her, Mr. Samuel began, "We have a problem." Mandy quickly exited the room and proceeded to the parking lot, attempting to maintain her composure. She was holding the manila envelope that Mr. Davis had provided her. Inside, she discovered photographs of herself and Sean Thompson, the business manager from the 3rd floor. Mr. Davis then proceeded to recount his conversation with Eric. Eric had threatened to make public the fact that the company had failed to comply with the code of conduct. He informed Mr. Davis that he would discuss this matter with his future ex-wife. Before deciding whether to take legal action, Mr. Davis informed her that they would meet with Sean the following time, but that she should return home and speak with her husband before the situation escalated further. He also informed her that they would convene with her and discuss her future at the company the following day, following her meeting with her husband. Mandy had difficulty locating her vehicle due to her emotional state and the brightness of the sunlight. The car's reflections made identification more challenging, yet her vehicle was not difficult to locate. The large black Hyundai Santa Fe was less conspicuous. Mandy entered the vehicle, recalling the arguments that led to Eric's eventual agreement to rent a car for her. He was arrogant just before his departure for Afghanistan. She wiped her eyes, donned her sunglasses, and proceeded home. A man in an aged Chevrolet sedan parked nearby pressed a button on his "Thank you, Bob." Eric said calmly, No, that's all. Please tell Ron that you guys have done a great job and deserve the award. Thanks again. Goodbye." Looking at his laptop, Eric sighed again. He thought, one more call. He'll be here soon. One more and there would be no turning back. But why would he come back at all? All that's left is an unfaithful wife who ripped out his heart and a ruined marriage that he'll never be able to put back together. Eric shook his head and he then proceeded to take out his cell phone and promptly dialed the number, awaiting the call. The first call, the second call, and the third call were received, followed by a soft click and then silence. Eric sat, his emotions a visible display, gazing at the video stream on his laptop. Finally, a few minutes later, a tear rolled down his cheek. Mandy proceeded to maneuver the large SUV onto the highway, emitting a groan. She hoped to avoid the congestion of the rush-hour traffic jams. With a forceful motion, she slammed her fist on the steering wheel, recognizing that her usual 30-minute commute would now take more than an hour. A trip that would typically take a mere 60 minutes now required over an hour. She reflected on her marriage, contemplating the viability of salvaging it. Eric had discovered her infidelity prior to his deployment to Iraq. He might have pardoned her, but not now. The photographs had been taken during his time in Afghanistan. She wept, grappling with the realization of his likely thoughts. Despite the slim odds, she felt compelled to attempt to repair the marriage. She chided herself, simply because she loved him, it's a peculiar way to demonstrate that affection. She had cheated on him on more than one occasion, yet on both occasions he had gone abroad to serve his country. She shook her head quickly, as if attempting to dispel feelings of guilt and shame, but the tears began to flow once more. Eric found it challenging to trust others, as his childhood had been marked by difficulties. His father had abandoned him and his mother when he was still young. Him and his mother when he was a child, and his mother was an alcoholic. In the 5 years that they had been married, Mandy had only seen his mother twice, once at their wedding and once when their son was born. It took him years to trust Mandy. When they met in college, she was aware that he was a soldier. She believed that she had accepted this fact, but in truth, he had already served 2 years and was on his way to becoming an engineering degree. They had been dating for approximately 1 year before Eric proposed to her. She could still hear her father's reaction, "No, Mandy. This has nothing to do with Eric." Her father's response was, "I think he will be a great husband. It's more about you. I don't think you will make a good military wife." He did not express anger, but his words conveyed a sense of frustration. It is challenging to be a good spouse when one's partner is Mike Lomax, Mandy's father, served in the Navy for 4 years when she was a child. She recalled the frequent quarrels her parents engaged in during that period. She was aware that her mother and father were experiencing difficulties and that her father did not want this for his daughter. She agreed with her father's assessment. Soldier's wife, they purchased a well-appointed starter home, and Eric secured a promising engineering position. Life appeared to be on an upward trajectory when Eric received his orders. However, upon learning of his impending deployment, Eric's sister-in-law admonished him for abandoning her. Adding to the challenges, Eric departed for Iraq while his sister-in-law was already 4 months pregnant. Mandy, her eyes brimming with tears, navigated the traffic. She recalled the solitude she experienced during her husband's prolonged absence. While her parents offered assistance, the nocturnal isolation was overwhelming. She yearned for Eric's physical presence and reassurances, even if only to hear his voice. Despite recognizing her own selfishness, she found the nights to be unbearably cold and lonely without him. In the final month before the baby's birth, Mandy's mother moved in to provide assistance. This proved beneficial to a certain extent. Mandy and her mother, Lisa, shared a close relationship in many respects. Their personalities were so similar that they appeared to be close friends rather than mother and daughter. However, there were certain topics that Lisa preferred not to discuss. One topic that Mandy was keen to avoid discussing was the details of her marriage while her husband was in the Navy. When Mandy attempted to initiate a conversation about this, her mother would become visibly upset. Eric returned home the day after Randy was born, and for a brief period, Mandy believed that they had become a functional family unit. However, this period of stability was short-lived, and Eric departed after only 10 days. Mandy was once again left to navigate the challenges of life without her mother's support. Despite her mother's observations and counsel, Mandy found herself drawn to the allure of a single act, leading to significant consequences for herself and those around her. While her mother refrained from delving into the specifics, Mandy sensed that her father's actions might have extended beyond the boundaries of their marriage. Despite maintaining outward displays of civility and respect, Mandy sensed a growing distance between her parents. The relationship between Mandy and her mother was characterized by a lack of passion and intimacy. Despite their proximity and shared living space, the two women maintained a distant and somewhat detached relationship. Mandy's postpartum depression and feelings of loneliness were compounded by the lack of emotional connection with her mother. However, her return to work initially provided a sense of purpose and stability. She was later assigned to a project with Shaw Thompson, where she encountered a more challenging and complex dynamic with Eric. From her vantage point across the street, Sean observed that Beau, the neighbor, possessed a distinctive physical appearance and an appealing demeanor. His soft baritone voice and attractive smile elicited a visceral response from Mandy whenever he entered a room. He exuded a sense of confidence and poise that suggested he was married to an attractive and affluent socialite from New York. Mandy and her children relocated to the area just a couple of years prior. In addition, she had the opportunity to meet his wife at a social gathering. While she was physically attractive and possessed the characteristics typically associated with a housewife on a reality show, Shaw's charisma and allure made him an even more intriguing figure. Just 1 month after they began working together, she yielded to temptation. When asked whether she had given up, she responded with a negative. She had been flirting with him for a brief 2-day business trip with the project team provided an opportunity to transform this flirtation into a full-fledged romantic involvement. A fledgling romance developed between them, with further meetings occurring before Eric's return home. Upon his return, Eric appeared to have undergone a significant transformation. The carefree, rustic aspects of his personality seemed to have dissipated. Mandy was aware that his trip had been challenging, resulting in the loss of several close friends. She even recalled his call on the day after the incident occurred. The Hummer in front of him concealed an improvised explosive device. The device killed 3 of his friends and injured another. Eric was profoundly affected. Mandy recalled allowing him to express his grief on the phone because she was unsure how to console him. She even became emotional when she told him how much she loved and missed him. This was partly because she truly felt it, but also because she was still in a relationship with Sean, which had only begun 5 days prior to Eric's return. She held Eric close to her. She attempted to revive him to his former state of being. She was certain of her love for him and believed that her affair with Sean was merely a brief period of weakness. However, when circumstances seemed to be improving, the order for his deployment to Afghanistan was issued. She was devastated. 2 months after his departure, she found herself once again in Sean's arms. She recognized that there was no justification for this, but ultimately, she attributed it to loneliness. And fear overcame the guilt. She was stalking Sean again, and it took all her charms to get him away from the succubus from the marketing department with whom he began communicating after their affair ended. She felt her face flush with shame for what she had done. Of course, you're ashamed, but that didn't stop you, did it? Mandy cursed herself. She tried to hold back her tears, but she couldn't. She felt Mandy experienced a profound sense of loathing with the onset of each new tear. Sean spent several weekends at her residence, and he even managed to persuade her to take part in another project. Mandy contemplated leaving Eric, but then reality set in. She and Randy traveled to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, to meet Eric upon his return from R&R. The trip was, to put it mildly, stressful. Mandy was certain that her parents suspected him, but they had not yet informed her of the situation. Upon seeing Eric, however, all her concerns dissipated as he embraced her and kissed her. She recalled the reason she had initially married him: they dedicated every hour to reviving their marriage and strengthening their family. Mandy smiled faintly, recalling that time Eric had been so passionate, so gentle, and so loving that she had vowed to remain faithful to him. At that moment, she vowed to remain faithful to him for the remainder of her life. Eric then informed her that he would not be returning to the army; instead, he would become a civilian. For months after returning from Afghanistan, she openly wept, aware that they would soon become a genuine family once more. Upon returning from Fort Bragg, she terminated all contact with Sean, much to his dismay. Mandy invested a great deal of emotional energy into preparing for Eric's return. She even sought medical advice regarding her concerns about loneliness and the impact of her husband's absence on her mental health. She was diagnosed with clinical depression and began receiving counseling and medication. As time passed, she experienced a sense of growing strength, both mentally and emotionally. She made a commitment to herself to become the best she could be. Wife. Eric could hope for. Finally, when he returned a few months later, she fulfilled her vows. She refused to use him, nothing, not her body, not her attention, not any part of her love. Although Kit was right, things were different when Eric returned home. This time, he was more careful and didn't share his heart so freely. She just thought it was because of what happened when he was abroad. Now, she began to realize that he already knew about her affair. This realization caused her distress. Eric stared gloomily out the window, watching the light rain on those unlucky enough to get caught. He could tell that a small flare-up wouldn't last long. He was confident that the sun would shine again soon. However, Eric was mistaken. It would not be soon. He was looking at a small dot on the laptop screen. She had been after a period of inactivity; she finally began to move. His wife's SUV was initially stuck in traffic, but it was now advancing. He took a deep breath and checked the time on his watch. It was time to make a call. The content of the call, and the subsequent conversation, could potentially be the last time he spoke with the woman he had loved for the last 6 years of his life. Mandy's eyes widened when her cell phone rang. She answered the call quickly. From his demeanor, she discerned that it was indeed he who had called. She uttered a brief prayer, took a deep breath, and answered the phone. "Yes, it's me," she replied. "Please, baby, let me try to explain and tell you how sorry I am." "Eric," there was only silence on the other end of the line. "Are you still there?" she asked. "Yes," he replied. "Honey, are you at home with Randy?" "No, I don't have a home." "Where are you?" "I'm not sure." I'm at Randy's, he said, and his voice betrayed the pain for only a second. You took care of that, she replied. Where are you? It doesn't matter. I'm just waiting. There was hope in her voice, so he asked, how are you waiting for me? Mandy was unable to suppress her sobs, which had become stuck in her throat. She had never heard such pain and anger in his voice before, and certainly not directed at her. Eric, please. I have so much to say. I messed up. I recognize that I have made a significant error in judgment, but I require your counsel. I have a multitude of concerns that I must address with you. I hold you in high regard, Mandy. However, your actions have caused me considerable distress. During my absence, you engaged in sexual intercourse with multiple individuals. This is not a single instance, it is a pattern of behavior. Consequently, I am uncertain as to what you believe you can say that will have any impact on the situation. I implore you to reconsider your actions. Eric, she implored through her tears, do not abandon us until I see you. Do not abandon us, she repeated, her voice rising in intensity. What have you done to us? She demanded. I know what I have done, but I have never given up on us. I was lonely and scared. I know that is not an excuse, but that is how it was. I love you and I believe in us, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. I really want to restore everything. Are you serious? He replied, his tone laced with disbelief. What is it? He inquired, his tone indicating surprise. Eric paused, pondering whether she truly believed what she was saying. He then asked, do you mean you didn't leave us when you were engaging in a sexual relationship with him? What about the way you screamed his name when he repeatedly struck you? To reach him as expeditiously as possible, she hoped to meet with him in person. She believed that if she could convey her remorse, he might then have some hope. She continued, I finally obtained proof that my wife had been unfaithful to me while I was stationed in Afghanistan. I believe we are both fortunate that I did not discover this infidelity while I was in the United States. Amanda, this will be our final discussion. In the event of a disconnection or if one of us is placed on standby, there will be no further conversation. Eric, please, we can seek the assistance of a psychologist. We can address this issue together. There are a few things you need to know before you leave. First, I have cleaned out all our accounts and transferred all our credit cards. She had been unfaithful to him for the past 3 years, so he was returning the favor. He ignored her. You can keep the house, he said. I'm sure I can still smell someone else's scent in our bed. In the following day, the images were disseminated to a multitude of recipients, including colleagues, family members, friends, and even the church. Additionally, a plethora of videos were shared on numerous adult websites, accompanied by the individual's personal information. It is anticipated that the individual in question will experience a surge in popularity. Oh, Eric, Mandy lamented. Why did you not wait until we conversed? I did wait, he replied. I waited 4 months after my return, but you did not utter a word. Had you not been discovered, would you have remained silent? What could she say? He was right. As for your little toy boy, Eric chuckled. I almost paid him a little visit, but after several meetings with his wife, I don't think it will be necessary. What a vindictive fool. You might want to give Sean a little warning. He'd better run. It seems that his wife's family has interesting connections with very dubious people. I'd be surprised if little Sean lives a year without an accident. She'll probably come after his little cheaters too. Oh wait. That also applies to you, Eric. Please allow me the opportunity to make amends. Mandy's mobile phone emitted a sound. Upon viewing the number, she identified it as belonging to Eric. This is Mrs. Johnson from next door. I warned you that if you lost consciousness, our situation would be irremediable. His tone was threatening. Startled, Mandy replied softly, okay, dear. I was simply concerned that something had occurred to Randy. Randy is fine, Eric. He is with me now and is sleeping soundly. She exhaled a sigh of relief. Speaking of Sean. Wife Victoria, he said in a calm and collected manner. When the two of you embarked on your business excursion last week, he was abruptly interrupted by the ringing of Mandy's cell phone. It was another neighbor who called. "Darling, this is Mrs. Watson. Are you absolutely certain that Randy is doing well?" "Yes, Randy and I are both doing just fine," Eric stated in a tone that was so peculiar, Mandy began to feel uneasy. He let out a brief, mirthful chuckle. "Now, about Victoria Thompson, she's just a mere acquaintance," he said. "While you and this individual were behaving in a manner that was not befitting of you for the past 3 years, I spent." In the span of 2 days, Mandy had managed to gain a deeper understanding of her husband's character. She was overcome with a sense of betrayal and pain, and her tears began to flow once more. He went on to say that, while she might excel in other areas, her sexual prowess paled in comparison to his own. Mandy's demands, which encompassed a multitude of specifics regarding her sexual preferences, left him with little time for pleasure. Sean, he surmised, would likely concur with his assessment. "Stop," Mandy implored. "You are welcome," he replied. Mandy's sobs intensified. Her small fists were clenched on the steering wheel, and she was shouting obscenities at the surrounding cars as they crawled forward. She gradually regained her composure and wiped away tears of disappointment. "Okay, Eric," she said, her voice still hoarse. "You've won. You got your revenge. You broke me." She paused, waiting for his answer, but all she heard was silence. "I still love you, Eric," she said softly. "I know that, but all I'm asking for is a chance to make it up to you. I'm begging you. Please, please. I must elucidate. There are certain medical issues that you should be aware of if you have ever loved me. Please meet me. Please, baby." Medical reasons include postpartum depression, clinical depression, bipolar disorder, and post-traumatic stress disorder. It is irrelevant which of these applies. "Mandy, you engaged in sexual intercourse with another individual." "I was not aware of this. As soon as I discovered this, I employed several individuals to monitor your activities. They were highly effective, utilizing methods such as telephone tapping and installation of surveillance equipment. Cameras were placed throughout the residence, even in the bedroom." Eric inquired if she truly believed he was capable of such actions due to his hatred for her. He then asked if there was no longer any love left between them. In response, she recalled a video of her in bed with him. She was startled when he referenced a previous incident when Randy had entered the room. Eric's voice was strained as he attempted to control his emotions. He then asked how she felt when she had watched him engage in the aforementioned act. 1 year the son referred to his partner as "daddy" in a manner that was disrespectful and inappropriate. This incident caused the narrator to experience a profound sense of loss and betrayal, as if a part of him had died right then and there. The narrator expressed his disbelief and frustration, stating that he was fortunate not to have known about this until they had arrived at Fort Bragg. Upon witnessing this, the narrator felt a sense of shock and disorientation, as if he had almost lost his way. He was in an unfamiliar place where it was difficult to find one's way, and this incident made him realize the gravity of the situation. The narrator's partner, Eric, looked at his laptop and saw that Mandy was almost home. His expression changed, and a cruel smile emerged. His handsome face, as he continued in a cold tone, indicated that he had not yet begun to inflict harm on Amanda. He heard Mandy gasp and whisper, "Oh my God." He observed her pull her SUV over to the side of the road and watch in horror as flames engulfed what had once been their home. He reiterated, "Amanda, the house and everything in it belongs to you." Mandy remained in a state of shock. Her eyes widened in disbelief. "Eric, what did you do?" she demanded. "That's a rhetorical question, isn't it?" "I was trained to build in combat," Eric replied, his grin widening. "Mandy, it makes sense that I might know something about annihilation. I might even know something about the specifics of the situation." "Where's Randy?" she shouted. "Damn it, Eric. Where the hell is my son? Our son is sitting 3 feet away from me and sleeping in his car seat. So tell me, where is he?" "He's right here," Eric replied, his tone mocking. "Can you read the message I left in our front yard?" "What is this?" she inquired, her voice laced with disbelief. "Oh, my God," Eric replied, his tone laced with mirth. "I wasn't certain if individuals would be able to decipher the message from the ground, but I'm certain news helicopters will be able to read it from the air. I'm not sure if the neighbors will express sympathy, though. I've posted these images throughout the neighborhood and paid several teenagers to distribute additional copies throughout the block," he continued. He paused for a few seconds and listened to his wife's sobs. "Perhaps you should consider where you will sleep tonight and in the near future," Eric said bitterly. "You could sleep in your SUV until they come and pick it up, or perhaps not. I doubt Sean will be able to help. I'm sure Victoria's is already dealing with him. That leaves only your parents. I wonder how your father will react to the fact that two individuals engaged in extramarital relationships reside in the same household is a source of considerable distress for Mandy." She sobbed, "Damn it, Mandy, are you truly as unintelligent as you appear to be? You have previously informed me that your father was unfaithful to your mother during his tenure in the Navy. Is it not possible that your mother was also unfaithful to him?" Eric responded with a derisive laugh. "Oh, damn it, yes. Your father informed me of the details shortly after my return from active duty in Iraq. Why do you believe he did so? Did he suspect that his daughter was cheating on her husband, just as her mother had done, but unlike his own wife?" Eric continued, "I cannot live with my wife for the rest of my life. Perhaps he stayed for you, or perhaps he still loved her. I do not know. This is his decision. Mine is to start over and hopefully find a woman I can spend the rest of my life with. I am sure I will find someone who can love. I will be faithful and be a good mother to Randy. Please, Eric." Mandy sobbed. "I can be that kind of wife. Just give me one more chance to show you and I'm already a good mother to Randy. I'm the only mother he needs. I suppose that's what the court has to decide, isn't it?" He said calmly, "Of course, the fact that I burned down our house and actually bankrupted us probably won't do me any good." Eric saw a young man in a t-shirt and baseball cap get out of a taxi and stop at the curb, looking in his direction. The man, attired in a shirt and baseball cap, alighted from a taxi and paused at the curb. Eric, flashing his vehicle's headlights twice, prompted the man to approach. "Mandy," Eric said calmly, glancing at his watch, "there are several matters you should be aware of, and the time is limited. I advise you to pay close attention. Firstly," he continued, "to reassure your superiors that my threats are not cause for undue concern. Similarly, another lawsuit is being filed, and it is likely to be successful. The court is likely to view her favorably, given the evidence that has been provided. In contrast, my own chances of success in court are slim, so I have taken a job abroad. I believe that Randy and I will enjoy this opportunity." Amanda then shouted into the phone, "You can't take my baby. In fact, he is my son, and I intend to keep him." Amanda, in a calm and collected manner, stated that in a few years, he would not even remember her. However, he reassured her that he would send her pictures of the child for Christmas and that they would call on Mother's Day and his birthday. He explained that they would contact her parents in case they did not have her current contact information. Mandy became overwhelmed with emotion, realizing the hopelessness of her situation. Eric sat for a while, feeling a sense of concern and unease about his actions. He was aware that his decision had significant implications for Mandy. He was disinclined to send her photographs or make telephone calls. The prospect of her enduring a period of prolonged anticipation, during which she would receive no communication, and of subsequently reliving this act of vengeance for years to come was more cruel than he had previously imagined. "Goodbye," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. "I hope you suffer." He wiped a tear from his cheek, listening to her anguished cries for her son, and terminated the call. Captain Black, the man in the t-shirt, the man in the shirt stood before him. "Not again," he said. Eric smiled weakly. "I'm just Eric Black," he replied. "Well, at least for a while." The young man grinned and handed him an envelope. It contained the numbers and passwords to the offshore bank accounts to which his funds had been transferred. However, it should be noted that some fees had been deducted. The envelope also contained passports, photo IDs, and plane tickets. Ticket vouchers for Marcus Gray and his son Michael Gray were provided to the teenager, who expressed his gratitude with a smile. Eric smiled in return and proceeded to place his old identification documents and 2 SIM cards from cellular phones into a small metal receptacle. He then took a lighter and melted the contents into a small puddle of blackened plastic. Eric then took a small hammer and smashed both phones, before discarding the remnants into the receptacle. He then proceeded to dispose of the remnants in a receptacle, visibly gratified with the outcome. Eric then produced the vehicle keys and proffered them to the young man, informing him that he was grateful for the rent. The young man, displaying a cheerful demeanor, replied with an apology. He chuckled, "I must have made a mistake." A few minutes later, Eric was checking his luggage at the airport. He smiled, thinking about what awaited him and his son in the next few weeks. His contract did not begin until the following month, so they planned to spend a couple of weeks on a secluded beach with a lieutenant he had met in Afghanistan. They were merely friends at the time, but now that he had proof of his wife's infidelity, Eric was eager to discover if there were any further developments. In a polite manner, the desk clerk informed them that they were wished a pleasant flight with their son, Marcus. Gray and his son proceeded through the lobby, embarking on a new phase of their lives.